Hello, hello, and welcome to the live stream. If you're joining me live, go ahead and pop a chat in the corner there. Let me know that you're here. If you're watching this later, feel free to sit back, relax, and take everything in. If you have a question at any point, whether you're here live or joining me later, feel free to ask that at any point. We're going to get into it today, and we have a really interesting question as always, and it is simply, how do I study the Bible? We talk about this a lot, the idea of like maybe a Bible study, or the pastor's getting up there to preach and he's got this big long stack of notes that he's getting through, and like, man, how does he do that? Or how do I study the Bible? I want to break that down into some steps for you. I want to answer that question by showing you how I study the Bible, or how I learn to study the Bible rather. So the first thing you need in order to study the Bible is a Bible. And the cool thing about this, almost any Bible that you pick up is going to work great for this study. And the only reason something wouldn't work is if you got one of those weird translations that we don't want to open and study out of. We have study Bibles too. So those are usually thicker. So this is a normal Bible. Then you can get one that's called a study Bible, and it is a lot thicker. And it's thicker because it has notes at the bottom. See that? So the scripture's up here, and below it is the notes. Let me find something a little bit more. There we go. So here's out of Daniel. Daniel's one of those texts. Oh, sorry. That's got a lot in it. You can see here, scripture. Oh, there's all my papers from church. Scripture's up here, commentaries down here. And that's because there's so much going on in Daniel that it takes a bit to explain what's going on there. And that's awesome that there's so much content there. But say you're not sure what translation you want. You're not sure what Bible to pick up. There's a couple of really cool tools that I want to show you. The first thing, make sure I've done this right here, is you can go to this site called Blue Letter Bible. If I'm doing this right, you should be able to see my mouse cursor as well. And it is an online Bible source. There's another website I recommend called Bible Gateway, or just simply bible.com works well as well. So you can use any of these sources, and they've got some really cool features. If you go over to the search the Bible box here, I've got it kind of cut off. You can click on this little box here, and it's going to pull open these different translations. And what's really cool is it's got a ton of translations. And briefly, I'll explain what those translations are in case you don't know. So the top here, we have King James Version. Oh, see, popped up for us. Next to that, we have the New King James, then the New Living Translation. We have the New International Version, the English Standard Version. I have that one underlined first. You have the Christian Standard Bible, or sometimes this one used to be referred to as the Holman Christian Standard Bible. They're kind of they're similar. They're not quite the same. You have the NASB 2020, or the New American Standard Bible, the NASB 95. I personally have a NASB 95 that I use for my study. The 20 is just as good. You have the Legacy Standard Bible here, Amplified Version here. This is the New English Translation. You have the Revised Standard Version. This is very popular with Catholics. You have the American Standard Version. You have the Young's Literal Translation, Darby Translation, the Webster Bible. Okay. We're not going to go any further because I want to point out some ones for you to pick up. Now, not all Bibles are created equally. There's a reason for that. They are translating from a language that we probably don't speak, i.e. Greek, Hebrew, or Aramaic, into a language you do speak. If you're listening to me, there's a very high chance that you're speaking English. And that's awesome, because you can understand me, right? And most of us don't speak, or especially we don't read Hebrew, ancient Greek, Koine Greek. And so we can't pick up those original translations and understand. That'd be a whole nother level of entry to get the Bible to us. So why do we have so many different translations? Well, the reason for that is they are all going after something different. For example, the King James Version is kind of a legacy version, if you will. It's been around since King James coined it, and it's been around for over 300 years at this point. I believe it's over 400 years at this point. I'm close to it. And so it's got a lot of tradition built up behind it. And which is really cool, because I will admit the King James is beautifully written. The problem with the King James, though, is it's hard to read. And a lot of the English in there, not a lot, some of the English in there has gone out of use. And that's a problem. If you pick up something and you're reading it and you don't understand the words, or they have, even more importantly, picked up a new meaning, that becomes a problem. Right? Because we don't have the ability to instantly pick up and read that old language. Think back to high school whenever you had to read Shakespeare. Wasn't that a drag? Wasn't that just, oh, I hate this? That's what the King James can be like for people who aren't used to that language, that way that it's spoken. As much as it can be, that English is a different language than the English that we're speaking today. And so it's a barrier of entry that I think if you're a King James onlyism, you have to explain why it's okay to have somebody read a Bible that they speak or they don't understand. Expect them to understand it, right? Like, the Holy Spirit is powerful, but the Holy Spirit's going to struggle a lot more if you're making somebody read Greek and trying to understand the Bible. So let's make that entry point easier, lower that for people. How do we do that? Well, we have other translations, like the New King James, which fixes a lot of the issues of the King James. It gets rid of the these and thous and those and adds in the and a. Makes it a lot easier to read. So here's Vinny's hot take of the library. I do not recommend the King James Bible to people. I will recommend the New King James. Unless they just love the King James and they're used to it and that's just to them the way the Bible is, that's fine. Cannot force somebody to pick up and read it, because it's just not going to work. Let them get something that's a little bit more entry level, like the New King James. Or, even better, if you want something that gets across thought for thought what is in the Bible, nothing is better than that, in my opinion, NIV. It is so easy to read, so good at getting the points across, and it's simple words, really. I preached out of the NIV for years when I was a youth pastor because it was so easy for the kids to understand. Because it's written at a lower reading level. Not as a bad thing, but as a good thing so people can understand it's there. I love it for that. Then you get some other really good Bibles to read. NLT, ESV is very, very popular. And the Christian Standard Bible is good as well. So any of these four I would recommend just for a good reader. ESV is kind of more thought for thought, a little kind of is in between of that. CSV is thought for thought. NLT, I believe, is word for word. That's kind of your spectrum. You have thought for thought or word for word. There's a couple different ways of getting that across. Then you get to my favorite translation, which is NASB, or the New American Standard Bible. And I love it for its word-for-word translation. It struggles sometimes to read and get across what is there, right? It is not an easy read all of the time. However, it is really, really good for studying. So if you're after a Bible that's great for studying, get yourself a standard. Okay, so we talked about translations. Awesome. That's really, really good. And here in a few seconds, we're going to look at a few different verses in different translations and why we might do that. So what's next? So you reading it. What do I do? So I'll read a passage. We're going to actually look at John 1 study. That is actually what I am going to be teaching in Sunday school. So if you're in my Sunday school class, turn off your ears because you're going to get a spoiler warning. Right? So flip it open my Bible. This is out of the NIV. And it says, "In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. He was with God in the beginning. Through him all things were made. Without him nothing was made. And that he has been made. In him was life. That life was the light of all mankind. The light shines in the darkness, and the darkness has not overcome it." Awesome, 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 right? So what do I do now? I read it. I think about it for a moment. Then I grab out a piece of paper. I usually have a piece of paper already open. And I start writing stuff down. Or if you like using computer, start typing stuff down. So what might I write down? What might I type out at this point? I would simply write, okay, I would start labeling stuff like, okay, well, the Word was God. That seems super important because saying something was God. Also make note, if you've got it in front of you here, you'll see that the word is highlighted. I'm just going to go ahead and get this pulled up. Bear with me for just a moment. We'll look at it in the NIV. Okay. There we go. So here is a Blue Letter Bible. It's got a lot of tools that we'll look at later, but right now, just focusing on this. So I'm going to, right off the bat here, I would highlight something or I would pull this, because right here, this, I'm going to stop clicking on things before I break something, but I would highlight, oh, I'm on the wrong screen here. This part right here. Word was God. That is so, so, so important for this, because Jesus being God, and we'll get to that here in a bit, it really hits on that idea that this is an important passage, right? So what is the Word? So now I'm going to start looking at what the Word was. Another thing that I do very early often is I'll go in here and I'll be like, okay, I read it in NIV. Now let's look at the NASB 20. Okay, so now it's going to be a little different. And so in the beginning was the Word. The Word was with God. The Word was God. Was in the beginning with God. So that John 2 is different. So I can open up here, yellow mark here for just a moment, out there. And I can look at the different translations. I'm getting cut off here. Hang on with me. All right, there we go. So we're looking at different versions here. We see King James, the same was in the beginning with God. New King James, he was in the beginning with God. NIV, which we already read, he was with God in the beginning. NASB, he was in the beginning with God. And we get this comparison. And we look at that again. Let's do it with 1:1. Like New Living Translation has some different words here, right? In the beginning, the Word already existed, right? It adds on that emphasis of he was already there. That's awesome. So I'm gonna jot that down in my notes. The Word already existed, because it emphasizes the idea that the beginning was there. He was there at the beginning, and he wasn't created. He was there with God from the very. So Nasby's same as all the others here, and so that's what's really awesome about that. Sometimes I look at the Amplified because it gets a little. The Amplified is kind of like having a commentary interlineary of what's going on. In the beginning, before all time, was the Word, Christ. Emphasizes right there who it was. The Word's God, was God himself. So it really hits home all of these different tools that we can look at. So that's really cool. Now, I read that. If I have a commentary Bible in front of me, I'm going to open up my commentary. Let's look at the commentary on the Blue Letter Bible here. So we're going to click on our tools again. Got commentaries, and it's going to pull open a list of commentaries for us to look at. And there are a ton of these to go through. Some quick ones. Matthew Henry commentary. That one out. C.H. Spurgeon would be another one to look at. Just seeing which ones are here. Vernon McGee would be a good one to look at. John MacArthur, which is getting cut off there, is one that I would highly recommend. And as you can see, there are just so many. There's another John MacArthur. H.B. Charles Jr. So many of those. I'm not going to click on those because I haven't tested them all before. And I don't want to accidentally open something and it just blow up into something crazy. But the links are there. And what would I do next? So I'll read my commentary. I'll look at Nasby. This is a MacArthur commentary. Looking at John 1:1. Let me get there. This is kind of testing my my Bible drill skills. John 1:1. This is what MacArthur has on it, and I'm not going to read all of it. I'm going to read a chunk of it. It says, in the beginning, in contrast to 1 John 1:1, where John uses a similar phrase, from the beginning, to refer to the starting point of Jesus' ministry in the gospel preaching, this phrase parallels Genesis 1:1. The same phrase is used. John uses the phrase as an absolute sense to refer to the beginning of time, space, material universe. So that's just the beginning. And he's got a long commentary there. And so from that, it depends on how in-depth the study is going for my purposes. I'm going to write all this out. I'm going to type this stuff down. Not to plagiarize word for word what MacArthur is saying here, but I want to type that out. I want to write it down so I understand up in here what is being said. Because if I'm going to teach something, I want to make sure that I understand what I have just read. So I am reading, I am writing stuff down, I'm reading some more, I'm writing stuff down, and you can make a whole study just doing that right there. Reading what's being said and summarizing. One exercise that I used to do quite a bit, some animals coming in my office down here, just ignore them, they come and they go. One exercise I used to do, and I recommend this for all who are studying or working on studying the Bible, take each verse by verse, for whatever book. James is a good one to do this with, or Gospel of John if you want a big challenge. Write down a verse. So take 1:1 for example. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. It was in the beginning with God. So you have that verse, right? Below that verse, skip a couple lines. You are going to summarize that verse in your verse. So it makes you think, oh, what is this talking about? What is this? You're not making a new translation of the Bible, but rather you are summarizing or commentating on what is being said. And what it does is it makes you think, oh, this is talking back to this verse here. Oh, I remember this over in another book. And you can write that out. And what it does is it helps train those connections in your brain. But also it helps you to understand what is in Scripture for you, so that you're able to explain or teach or just really to learn what is being written. Super, super good on that. Super important skill to just be able to make those connections. And I struggle with that to and still to this day. But the more you do it, the more you exercise that muscle of making those connections, it's going to help a great deal. Another thing that a lot of Bibles have is something called an inner. That's this little section. My finger here, right here, in between scripture verses. I can't get it quite to focus on where you see it, but that is just going to be references to other scripture passages that are talking about the same thing that verse you just read is talking about. So that's another really good tool for back over making those cross connections and seeing where else this place is talking about or what else is going on. What is happening? This craziness. All right, let's go back to Blue Letter Bible because we're going to look at something else as well. So, wrong screen. So cross references. So this is what I was just talking about with that interlineary stuff. There are cross references that we can look at. What do we have? We have here, in the top here it says, in the beginning, it's just in the beginning of the B is cut off there. Have these passages that all have something similar. So Genesis 1:1 also has a phrase, in the beginning, the earth was formless and void. Same idea, same thing. So this breaks it down, gives us examples. John 1:14, the phrase the word was is used very similarly. John, in all of his writings, is famous for calling Jesus the Word. He's the only one that does it. All right, what else do we have? Just more comments on that. And what's really nice about that is it does all this for you, so you can just kind of, I'm just going to copy. So we can copy this, come up here to the top, and just click paste. Go. And then we can jump over to that passage. So 1 John 1:1 says, Nasby, word was from the beginning, what we had heard, seen with our eyes, and what we had looked at, touched with our hands concerning the word of life. That word of life is probably Jesus. So I'm writing this stuff down. I'm making notes of this. Doing this in a Word doc is really helpful because it's going to allow you to really be able to emphasize the important key. It's like, oh, the word of life is mentioned in 1 John 1. Oh, Jesus is the word. Emphasize that part. We're going to look at what it's talking about in context as well. So we're going to read this stuff here. We're going to read the verses behind it as well. We're going to make good use of all of this just resources that we have here. All those things are really all right. If you don't feel comfortable using the computer and you like to do things old-fashioned, which is kind of me sometimes, old-fashioned when it comes to my studying, there's some things to use. And I've talked about this a few times before. I think it was in the city of what books should I get. We looked a little bit at word studies talking about the word who is Jesus in John 1:1. This book right here, Strong's Concordance. I am very clear, I'm a NASB fan, so I have a NASB exhaustive concordance. A lot of these are written for Old King James. I have seen more and more concordances come out for different translations. So NASB is a good one. If you're going for study, can't emphasize NASB enough. If you want something for a translation you can easier and understand, find those out there. I believe there's some for NIV, there are some for ESV. Those concordances exist for sure. Another thing to get on top of that, on top of this, for sure, most definitely, would be individual commentary. I'm going to get these cameras down eventually. These two commentators, authors are my favorite. If you're wondering who to get and grab and to emphasize, have Charles Swindoll has the Living Insights commentaries, and then you have the MacArthur Testament commentaries, which are written by John MacArthur. who unfortunately passed away a few weeks, or I think a few months now, prior to me recording this video. Definitely a great loss to his earthly works here, but he's most definitely in glory at this point. Excited for him on that. But those two commentators, or authors, I should say, are awesome. I don't know if commentators is a word. I'm coining new words. Say you're not wanting to get individual commentaries per each book, because that is a very pricey commitment. Because, yeah, so Swindoll's here are $26 a pop, and this one is $6 for MacArthur's. And you can see MacArthur's is a little bit more, about the same size. However, this is covering 3 books with Swindoll's, and MacArthur's is only covering. Not here or there for price comparison, but something to think. Say you want to get one commentary, you can get something called a Believer's Bible Commentary or a whole Bible commentary. This one's written by William MacDonald. It's really, really good for that entry-level Believer's basic stuff. There's other books or other big commentary series and sets out there that you can get. One thing I highly recommend is you look at the author and see kind of where they align on the spectrum. Are they a conservative author? Are they conservative denomination? That's what you're interested in. If that's what you're looking for, go for it. Throwing a liberal in, I would be more cautious, because a lot of the times the studies, they come in with a lot of bias. Everybody comes in with a bias. They come in with that liberal bias, and they're very hostile towards the gospel, it seems sometimes. That can be a dangerous place to read and study. So just make sure you know where those authors are on their alignment charts when you're getting these commentaries. Swindoll and MacArthur are great, but I believe in that regard because they are from that more conservative, a more Bible-first mentality of their commentaries. They don't really assume much, and they just go, here's what the word says. Sometimes it makes you uncomfortable, but that's what God is. Not uncomfortable, but he is right. We feel uncomfortable because we've done something wrong. But I'm going to show off with that note. How do we study the Bible? Again, just write stuff down as you go. That's the simplest answer I can give you on this. It's not going to be any right or wrong answer. It's a, what's your goal? Is your goal just to understand more? Then there's no end point. Just do what you want to do. If you're teaching something, then you want to write down your notes in a way that you convey those notes to others. One thing I do is I write down everything, and then I come back later and delete things that are either repetitive or don't make sense or aren't to the point that I'm trying to get to. Maybe I want to teach on Jesus being the Word in John 1. It's not going to be super helpful for my students to know that John 1:1 uses the same phrasing or terminology as is in Genesis 1:1 when it says the word, or in the beginning. That's not really relevant for Jesus being the Word in that study, rather than at other times that John is using Jesus' title of the Word. So that is really narrowing in on what you're after there. Hit that point is important. As you get more comfortable studying, you're going to know going into it, okay, here's what I want to teach. Here's what I want to get across. So I'm going to hit a point of being able to get my thought across, but also summarizing this in a way that people understand. So all that to say, how do I study the Bible? Simply read and write stuff down is the simplest answer I can give, because it allows you to learn in 2 ways. I want to add a third. If you got a spouse, let them know what you read. Let them know what you learned about. I'm always letting my poor wife know what things that I have read or what things I have learned, what I'm excited to teach about. And she very faithfully listens to me in my lessons and is excited most of the time when I come to her with stuff. Sometimes I get her with my genealogy studies and she's like, oh, no, not again. But she still listens diligently. Just need to get my thought across. Sometimes just because I'm processing what I'm trying to teach on that, or what I've been studying, and I don't know quite what is making sense. So I need to talk it out with somebody. Okay. One last asterisk note. Ready? I have some other commentaries that I picked up. If you are more mature in your faith and you can, I would suggest picking up commentaries from different authors and books. If you have a favorite book of the Bible, focus on that because that's going to give you a framework of these different authors. Not too long ago, I went on a tangent of teaching Revelation. So I have a ton of Revelation commentaries. However, I only grabbed one Revelation commentary because I was just grabbing each commentary series that I have or commentaries that I have. One that I have quite a few of, and I think I've shown this before, is the Exposition series, which is written kind of in conjunction with a lot of the big authors out there. Like this one is written by David Platt, various different things. All of a sudden my mind's going blank on things that he's written. I think he's written Unforgettable God or Chained or something like that. He's written multiple books. So he was one of the authors of this. He's a series authors of the Expositions with Daniel L. Atkins and Tony Murata. But what is great about this is they're kind of easy to get through. They're not super big books, and they're not too expensive per copy. They're $15 a pop as I'm reading this, or 15-ish. Some of these variants are bigger; they cost a little bit more. So that's one to look at. I believe places like Mardel's carries the Expedition series. They also carry the Swindle and Arthur's as well. Now these other ones are a little harder to get and a little harder to find. This one is super duper famous, and a lot of your old Sunday school teachers swear by these. Some of your old pastors even love these guys, or love this guy, and that's for a very good reason. This is the old Presbyterian minister, I believe. Oh, I want to make sure I get this right. Hang on. Say it in the back for me. I believe it was Presbyterian. Anyway, I'll look it up later and make a note at the bottom. It is the Through the Bible's commentary series by J. Vernon McGee. He has probably one of the most prolific commentaries of all time. He has influenced so many people with writings and his just thoughts on various different things. And I've got several of his commentaries because they're not very thick, but also they cover just a few chapters per commentary. And so the material is just super duper thick. They're not super expensive per copy. This is an $8 Mardel edition. But again, so much in his commentary, so much wisdom in that many and taught through. Another one. So this is kind of one of your, in the nicest way, this is a more liberal study of the book of Revelation. This is a new international biblical commentary book on Revelation, written by Robert W. Paul. I'm not going to say too much about it. I got that at Half Price Books. Picked it up because I feel like I'm at a point in my in my walk with Jesus, I'm going to just use that phrase, that I can read authors that I don't necessarily agree with. And it's not going to make me shake in my faith. So I'm firm in my foundation, and I want to know those other opinions, those counter arguments. So I can be like, oh, that's a good point. Or be like, that's wrong, and I can find where it's wrong. Usually you can, which is really cool. And then the last one, little bias on this series because of the author. This is the Tyndale New Testament series on Matthew by R.T. France. Why am I biased on this? Big genealogist. I actually linked my genealogy back to William Tyndale. So that if you don't know who that is, that's the guy who one of the first people to translate the Bible into English. He was actually killed for it, and then a lot of his work that he did was a basis for the King James Version later on, which is an interesting little tidbit. And all that to say, there are so many commentaries. Oh! I remembered I have one more over on my bookshelf. Okay. This is unreadable. This is the Interpreter's Bible, and I grabbed this bad boy at Half Price Books. They had the whole series sitting on the end table cap thing, and they were basically just kind of staring at it like, what is this thing? I walked over and I picked it up, it is probably the most liberal commentary that I have ever picked up. And I've got a whole series of it. I got it for like $15. And there's like, I think 25 books in total. And they're these big, thick boys. And they cover multiple books in each one. This one's Leviticus through Samuel. It's quite a bit, right? And it's awesome because it's all that. I got it for a good price. Bought it secondhand. I'm not going to go out and buy it from the author itself on that because I just don't use it anymore. They do the super expensive brand. And I got it. I've been reading through parts of it as I'm doing different studies. And yeah, it's super liberal on what it believes, teaches. But what's cool about that, if you're doing it, teaching it, for studying, want that counter argument or want that counter point, it's there for you. So I've got a set of these. I've got some other liberal works and stuff. I don't want to feel like I'm bashing people too much here. I just believe that the Bible is superior to any other source. Even these commentaries, they are secondary to what the Word says. They just help me say what I'm trying to say better. So that's that. All that to say, commentaries are super helpful. Get you one, get you two. Get one big book with all the commentaries in it. Get a study Bible, which kind of eliminates the need for a lot of these, unless you're doing some really deep dive studies and you want them. Great. And just be a little cautious on who you're buying and what you're buying. And if you have questions, let me be a resource for you. Ask, hey, is this a good author? Is what they're teaching good? And I can probably give you a really quick answer of like, oh yeah, I've heard them, I read them, they're awesome. Or maybe you stump me and I'm like, oh no, I don't know. Or, and I probably wouldn't read that. So I gave you some examples here. Obviously, Arthur, Swindle are great. The exposition series is really good as well. And even the Vernon McGee Through the Bible commentary series, super, 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 super good if you're wanting something in that regard. Yeah, so how do you study the Bible? Read it, write it down, tell people about it. Excuse me. That's how you get good study time. And that's how you get across. I went long tonight. If you joined me, awesome. Thank you so much. If you are watching this later, you made it to the end. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And if you really want to help this ministry grow, help me reach more people for Jesus, do me a huge favor. Like this video, subscribe to the channel. And if you're feeling bold, if you're feeling embrazened, share this to Facebook page, your LinkedIn. I don't even know if that's a thing anymore. Whatever, in any sources that you got that you think people would be pulled over here, awesome. I would appreciate it. It would help this channel grow and help get the word of Jesus out to people. Which is the ultimate goal of this, is helping people grow their life with Christ and build that life on a biblical foundation, which is the foundation of Jesus Christ's life and ministry. Thank you so much for your time, and I hope you guys have a blessed day.